Music, music, music. And the journey through music is one that takes you through an endless experience. And as original once said, if music be the food of love, then play on. I stand to be corrected, but the music you just listened to is the ground that has been sung by the students that have been conducted by Professor Will Kessling from Florida State University, who is in studio at the moment in the other side of the studio, presently alongside his student, who is a maestro in his works as well, none other than Dr. Elijah Adongo of the Department of Music in Kenyatta University. Welcome, gentlemen, and welcome to this conversation tonight.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
All right. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Will, and there has been great confusion when it comes to talking about classical music. Some people think classical music is music for the classy guys. Others think classical music was music produced or initiated in the classical age. But we're here asking, what is classical music? How exactly do you define classical music?
Well, I think we define classical music as a music of Western European or European tradition. And so we would call it Western music as opposed to, say, the music of China or the music of Africa or other countries. So, and it evolved mainly through, religion, through the church itself, and evolved from early Christianity up until today, and the so-called classical music is still evolving. Now, there is a period, an artistic period, of Western music history that we call classical music, and that's where we get some composers like Mozart and Beethoven and Haydn. They are classical composers. But Bach of the Baroque period, or Mendelssohn of the Renaissance period, or others of different artistic periods represent this broad generic term that we call classical music. And it can be little music as for a single pianist or a pianist and a solo singer, or it can be a huge piece of music for a 100-piece orchestra and 1,000 voices singing together. So this classical music runs like this. It's a big, long history, but I hope that's a capsulated look at what classical music might be.
All right, and before we go very far, I'm going to go over to my good friend, Dr. Elijah Adongo, who we sang in the Kenyatta University Choir almost 10 years back. And this is my question to you, Dr. You, as an African, your classical music was introduced to you at some point in your life. How has it shaped you as a musician? How has it helped you become a better musician after playing ohangla and other kinds of music, other kinds of African music? How is this fusion of the classical music making you a better musician?
Thank you very much. Before I respond to this question, I would like to make it clear that it is Professor Will is from University of Florida and not Florida State. So Florida State University is a different one. FSC.
Sorry for that.
So this is University of Florida. Okay. And so how has classical music shaped my musicianship? So if that, I would rephrase that question.
That's the question.
Okay. I think it's given me some of the tools, because as I study classical music, I study just different elements of music and how these elements are portrayed in this genre, this generic genre of classical music. But otherwise, it has just given me the tools of how to treat elements of music differently. Because if I come to Kenyan music, if I come to, for instance, a Luo folk song that has been arranged to be performed, I will still have to do phrasing correctly. I will still have to breathe correctly. I still must analyze the text so that I can give a good meaning of the text. So by studying classical music, you're just getting details of how to analyze elements of music and to be free with them and to interpret them in different ways. And then I apply the same analytical thinking when I'm studying different kinds of music.
All right, and as we continue to talk about how this fusion can actually get to work, Professor Will, you have been in touch with communities from all over the world, and you have been conducting ensembles and orchestras around the world. How is the reception of classical music from other cultures, from Asian people, from the African people, from the American people? I'm talking about maybe the Latin America. how is this bringing, is it the music that is bringing people together, or is it a kind of music that would also be shaping their individual cultural music and, you know, reshaping it? What do you think about that?
Well, what I think is, I've been privileged to go all around the world, and Asia and South America, and now Africa, and Europe, and into Russia, and so forth. So I've seen and heard a lot of music and seen a lot of music makers, and have been privileged to make with lots of folks around the world. And so what strikes me is every culture has music, and music is for everyone. I mean, we are walking, talking, living musical instruments. In our voice, we have melody. In our body, we have rhythm. And I mean, nowhere more is it apparent than when I witnessed Kenyan music for the first time, and tonight these wonderful choirs performing, you know, the music of Kenya, and it's just proof of what I'm saying. The melody from the voice, and the rhythm in the body with the dancing, and the text, you know. Of course, with vocal music, we have the text that we deal with, and with languages if we're performing music all over the world. But the thing is that every human being uses music, and music is everywhere. And because it is the language of the world, I can go to China and not speak Chinese and still make music with the orchestra or the choir. Or I can go to Russia, or I can come to Kenya. Luckily, everyone speaks English here, but I can go to South America. And it doesn't matter what the native tongue is. The native tongue of the world is music. That's the language we all speak. And I believe that it's part of the language that God speaks, and that's why we all speak it, and we can relate to each other through music.
All right. And just before I go to Dr. Adongo, you've been in the country this whole week, and you've had a terrific week all the way from Monday, listening and conducting different ensembles. You're going to tell me if you conducted any orchestras here in the country. I'm not aware of that yet, but how is the experience so far, and what can we improve on even as we continue to learn classical music?
Well, that's a great question, and actually the first part, this is actually my second trip to Kenya. I came in 2006, and at the invitation of now Dr. Wambugu, and he invited me to come and do a concert with the Nairobi Music Society Chorus and Orchestra. So I did work with orchestra and his chorus, and this is before he became a doctoral student of mine at the University of Florida. And tomorrow I'm actually going to work with the youth orchestra in downtown Nairobi, and I'm looking forward to that. But at any rate, to learn classical music, or to learn the style, I think Dr. Adongo has encapsulated it. We master the fundamentals of music. We master the way to manipulate the fundamentals of music, the elements of music. And once we learn the elements and we have practiced them and created that skill set, we can do classical music, we can do Kenyan music, we can do Chinese music and Latin music, we can do it all. But there's a basic skill set involving melody and rhythm, and so we master those, we become masters. And so all we need is exposure. I need more exposure to Kenyan music. I need more exposure to Asian music. And the more I see and listen to, then I learn how to interpret myself. With all my study of 50 years of making music, I know how to manipulate the elements. I just need to see the character of those manipulations based on the country's style and the language.
All right. Over to my friend, Dr. Adongo. A few years back, you went to the United States for further studies, and you were back late last year. If I stand corrected, you were back. And I remember when I met you on the streets of KU, I was happy to see you back. And of course, the amount of wealth of experience and knowledge you're bringing back to the students in Kenyatta University Music Department. What is the experience there? How we talk about people going to Europe or to United States of America and other countries such as Canada and Australia for exposure, and so that we can go and have eye-opening experiences out there. What was this process for you? How did you get to fit in, and what did you bring back from the States, and how are you using it to make sure that the students are actually doing better, maybe even better than you were doing years back when you were sitting in the same place?
Several questions. So one of them is, how was the experience for me? I think it was a wonderful experience, because I got an opportunity to interact with many wonderful musicians, many wonderful teachers, and that gave me another way of how to look at music performance and music education. So I was able to work with Professor Kessling's choir to begin with. That was a wonderful experience, because then I was able to learn choral conducting firsthand from the professor, besides meeting in classroom work. And also it was a good experience, because then you learn the discipline of how to run choirs, and also artistic work, and also we're also working on research in music education. So it was a lot of things, but besides just learning that, also creating connections between us and the rest of the world. So meeting various people, various teachers, various professors, other students, and those connections, we have kept them up to now. So I think that is a wonderful thing, because then moving forward, if I want to go to the United States, then I have someone I know there that I can talk to. If I would want to go to probably South America, then there is someone you've met there during your studies that can help you move forward. So we created many connections, and we learned a lot of things in the process, and also getting to the discipline of making artistic performances. So that was really important, more important than the content. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to move to Professor Will, and the question I have for you right now is closely related to what Dr. Elijah has been speaking about, and that's more of where we have students coming from here and coming to universities such as yours for further studies. What do you like most about these students that come from countries such as Kenya?
What I like most about it is what they bring to me that I can learn from them. And of course that is their culture, their music, the music of these countries, a little introduction to language of the country. It just makes me a better person. It makes me whole. It makes me understand. It helps me to understand the world better. To have these international students, and I'm really blessed. So I have another student who's now from Kenyatta University who's studying. I have a doctoral student from Seoul, Korea. I have a doctoral student from Beijing, People's Republic of China. I have a master's student from Puerto Rico. I have students from everywhere, and over the years, I've been privileged to work with many, and it's just helped me also to understand the world better and their culture, and to understand music better. And the thing is that they always bring me new music from their country that I can learn and perform at my school.
So has Dr. Elijah taught you how? Okay, I think I asked that question. I'm just being naughty with the question, but I hope Dr. Elijah gets to teach you how to play the ohangla and the bull drums. And that would be very interesting. And moving on to Dr. Elijah, as we talk about African music, is it a crime? We're living in a world, in an age where, for lack of a better word, we're living in an age of fusions, and we've seen people fusing music and creating new genres of music from what has pre-existed. Is this a crime? Is this polluting music? Or is this building better music?
It is not a crime. So if we say African music, then that's a general term. So the best way to put it is music of African traditions, because we have different traditions in Africa, and from each tradition we have various music and dances that come out of it. And so the thing is, we have to try to perform that music in a way that it can be authentic, but authenticity is really difficult to achieve, because we never lived in that past. So we try to learn from the past, but we were not there. So we cannot achieve authenticity 100%. So when we have to move forward with this music, people have to adapt that music so that it's brought from another context to a new context. And every time that people are bringing anything from one context to another, it's bound to change. There are elements that will be lost, there are other elements that will be gained. For instance, most of African music and dances were performed for specific occasions. If there is a birth ceremony, then people will perform. But then with the new context, we have to bring that music from a birth context to a music festival, for instance. And there is no celebration there, but things change. So we have to rearrange that music also for it to be in voice parts while it was in a different form. You also find that we also borrow most of these dominant rhythms, rhythmic motifs from these pieces into creating other new pieces, maybe in popular music or in what people would call Afrofusion, where you have elements of African music and also elements of foreign music, maybe from Caribbean or Europe or the Americas. So whenever we are moving forward, we cannot move with that music like a museum material. So if it is a museum material, then it cannot change. But because we are human and we have to adapt it and respond to it in different ways, then we have to keep modifying this music and making changes so that it fits new audiences that we seek to listen to this music. So I would think that it's a balance that we have to strike between performing that music the way it was performed and performing it in a different way that appeals to the current audience. So it would not be wrong if we modified it, but it would be best if, as we modify, we also retain important fundamentals that were there in the traditional music.
All right. The word fundamental has been fundamental in this conversation. And back to you, Professor Will, where we talk about these fundamental aspects of music, and of specific genres of music. That means we need to have people like you on the ground to make sure that we remain sober musically. Is there hope for people like me who cannot read music when it comes to classical music? Is there hope for people like me, and how can we adapt and make this experience much better, both as listeners and maybe as musicians who come on the side to support the classical music?
That's a great question, and can I just add one comment to Dr. Adongo's thing about fusion? You use the word fusion,
right. And
sometimes I say even a musical collision. For example, putting cultures together on a concert in December. I actually took a pre-recording of an imam calling people to prayer from a minaret, and while that recording is playing, I had my choir sing a Kyrie from the Roman Catholic Mass while the imam is calling the people to prayer. So that's more than fusion, it's actually a collision of culture. And so I think these things are wonderful too, that we can actually take different cultures and kind of press them together. Now, in terms of musical skills, like musical reading, and so Martin, you say, well, I don't read music. I bet you read music better than you think. And really the only way we learn to read music is for someone to stick it in front of us and to start teaching us a piece of music. And as we see the notes and the rhythms and the pitches go by, we start to associate those things in our musical mind. And before long, people who are not readers, if we have a teacher who will force us to read and look at the scores, then we can eventually learn to read. I've had some of the best singers I've had in any of my choirs are some singers who have wonderful voices, who have never sung in a choir, couldn't read a note of music, and have become some of my best choir members at a pretty good choir at a pretty big university. So, yeah, all can read music if they want it, and if someone kind of cajoles them along. And but the big thing is sticking the music in front of you and having you learn to read it as you're being taught. I know a lot of probably the Kenyan music is taught by rote, and or even other musics may be taught by rote. The Kenyan music with the rhythms and everything are quite complex, but they can be learned, and it can be learned to be read. It just takes a professor who's daring enough to put the music there and push singers through it.
All right. I think I'll be looking up to Dr. Elijah Adongo once again, because I happened to sit under him 10 years ago, and I did not learn the score and all that. I think I'm going to come back to that. And it's an encouragement for Africans also, like me, who don't know how to read music, to be in situations where we can actually read music. And back to you, Dr. Elijah. Let's now get into the close of this conversation, where we talk about the impact that classical music has all over the world. And once in a while, we've had this saying that music is a powerful tool. And others have even said this is the most powerful tool, artistic tool, that we have in the world today. And that, if that statement be true, then this is something that can use to change the world as we see it. And as the world continues to face different calamities and different situations that needs to bring people together, how can music come on board to make sure that we get to unite as the people of the world, and how can we go about it?
All right. So before I could talk about that, I would say that even if you do not know how to read music, there's still hope, because there are other avenues also of learning music. Because we have a lot of audios, and we have YouTube, and you have all these recordings. So some people also start learning music by just listening to these recordings. And then when now they get the scores, then now they can associate the sound that they're listening to the scores. So, and it's usually a model that we are advised to, that we should always start with sound before sight when you're introducing people to reading of music. So I do think there's a lot of hope, and you find it very easy when you can now see the symbols that represent the sound that you've been listening to. And in terms of the impact of classical music around the world, I think it's the most widely taught music probably in Africa and also in Europe. And in Africa, it's mostly taught because of colonization. So when African countries were colonized, and then there's the new system that the colonialists came with, which is the education system, the formal educational system, and that we now get music as a subject that is introduced there, and that's how we get many people being taught classical music in many African countries. In terms of the impact, I think we have had to learn a lot, as I mentioned before, of analytical skills. So every music has melody. There's melody somehow in every music from every culture. But then the fact that we are already having a piece of music that already some people sat down and analyzed and torn it apart, so that we can now say this is rhythm, this is melody, this is form, and now that already gives you an analytical thinking. So if you move to a different culture, you begin to think of how can we tear this music apart to be able to understand it best. And it has also brought a lot, music can also be used a lot in terms of creating peace, because when people go to sing, they forget about their troubles. They forget about enmity that was in between them. So you find it's very easy for different ethnic groups to come together and sing without thinking about their ethnic issues, which in this country, mostly the ethnic issues are very emotive during elections. But you find that although all of us who are in the choir are going to vote to different candidates, but that did not hinder us from uniting and singing and being happy about performance. So you find music is always uniting people, and it covers people from thinking about negative issues that divide them. They think mostly of things that bring them together. As the good professor told us last time about ensemble in the choir is something that is to be done doing together. So ensemble to mean together. So singing together, coexisting together. So I think music has really helped in bringing peace amongst many communities.
All right, and as we head to August 9th elections in this particular country, we need peace in this country. I hope yourself and the rest of the team of musicians who are intentional about music will also be able to devise ways of making sure that music unites us in that particular period. What's your parting shot before we go to Professor Will? What's your parting shot for today, Dr. Elijah?
So my parting shot for today is just to thank, first of all, Professor Will Kessling from University of Florida for coming to Kenyatta University to share his skills and his experience of many years with us as a department and with the community. We had a good chance of meeting the community choirs. We met the students, we met the staff choir, the Kenyatta University staff choir, and tomorrow we'll close this session by meeting an orchestra. You asked about an orchestra. Tomorrow we'll meet the youth orchestra, Safaricom Youth Orchestra, mid-morning. So just to thank him for coming here to share his experiences with us.
All right.
And I would encourage the rest of the university community to take part in music. Enjoy music, join the students' choir, join the staff choir, join all the ensembles that are around, because we sing more, we add more days to our lives. So thank you very much.
All right. I hope my colleagues are hearing that, especially about the staff choir. Over to you, Professor Will, as we wind up. What's your parting shot, and especially as we talk about the impact of classical music around the world and how the classical music can actually unite the nations of the world and the communities of the world. Also, as you wind up, tell us your favorite Kenyan food, and then we'll call it a night.
I think, Martin, you know, when I think about the world and the situation that we're in, I've always said, instead of sending two ambassadors to each other to argue over situations between countries, I would like to send my choir to a country to meet with that president, and then he sends the choir. And when there's two presidents meet and there's a problem between the two countries, my choir sings to their president, their choir sings to my president, and then they talk politics.
All right.
And the choirs, I think, performing and sharing would change the whole tone of world politics if we could just share the gift, the peace, the love of music, and what it does for human beings. And that's my prayer for the world. So let's all just keep singing.
Mm-hmm. All right. What's your favorite Kenyan food before I let you go out of this conversation? Do you have a favorite Kenyan meal? Is there food? Is there food that excites you in Kenya?
Oh, food. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry.
That was changing some food. Okay. Food. I think I haven't experienced much outside of the hotel in Nairobi this time, but my first time when I came, Dr. Wambugu took me out into the country, and we had a barbecue of a goat leg, the hind quarter of a goat. That was the most incredible meal I think I've had about anywhere in the world. So I have to say, I like goat.
All right. All right. Here we call it nyama choma, and goat is our favorite meat, barbecue meat. Now, thank you, gentlemen, for coming through. Esteemed gentlemen, Professor Will Kessling. I wanted to say Kingsley, but it's Kessling, and Dr. Elijah Adongo. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we'll be sure to continue catching up with classical music and developments of music in this particular country. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us tonight. It's a pleasure. It's more than a pleasure to have you on board.
Thank you.
All right, now we take a short break right here on KUTV Primetime News. And when we come back, we have more in store for you. Don't go anywhere.